In this video, I want to talk about, well, I talked about it before, but I want to talk about paranormal phishing. We know what phishing with PH means. That is when criminals send you an email that appears to be a message sent by either the government or by one of the companies you have a subscription with, or it appears to be for someone you know, but it's not. And you're required to either transfer some money or to log in. And when you do it, there is malware and spyware that will affect your computer system, and they can steal all your data. And if you transfer some money, they may even be able to plunder your bank account. So that's phishing. That's what a lot of criminals do. But where did this practice of phishing come from? It existed before the internet. It comes from witchcraft. Let me explain it. When you want a group of people to operate in a satanic pattern, you trick them into agreement with that pattern. They have to align their mind in line with the satanic pattern you want them trapped in for them to operate in it. And the best way to train people in a satanic pattern is to hide the origins of the pattern or to hide the long-term consequences of operating in that pattern. You dangle a carrot, or you offer a bait. And that bait can be something people need. The bait shouldn't be something irrelevant to people's life, but you offer them a bait, and the bait you use to draw them in. And once they're in, it's hard for them to see that they've been trapped. Because there's a thing about human beings throughout history, and also today. It's easy to trap them, but it's quite difficult to convince people of the fact they've been trapped, or that they are trapped. Often people are resistant to admit that they have been fooled. Now, let me give an example of how this can operate. I'm talking about paranormal phishing. Let's say that you had a guy who made it with a chick, had 3 babies together, but he suddenly left one day. He just wanted to leave, and he found another chick, and with whom he had 2 babies. But those other 3 kids, when they grew up, they looked for the man. And eventually found the man. The man was now named Michael, even though his real name is Peter. He called himself Michael, and he pretended to be this, this benevolent entrepreneur who donates a lot to charity, who travels to far distant regions in Africa and Southeast Asia to help the poor. He built a whole new reputation that was based on empty air. It was based on nonsense. So when those 3 kids of him appear, people didn't even have to know it were his kids because they looked just like him. So some thought it's just relatives of him. But when he saw them, he knew, oh dear, I'm in trouble. So what happened now? That guy killed 2 of them. The 3rd one escaped. The whole community now found out that they were dealing with a scammer. All the money this so-called Michael, whose name is really Peter, invested in the community was money he stole from others. So the community there participated in a scam without them being aware of it. And they could have been aware of it if they've checked his background, or if they would have examined his stories, because his stories didn't add up. So now, yet a murderer who killed 2 of his own children amongst them. And they had his money that was invested in their local economy. They didn't want to forfeit the benefits of this blood economy. But they also didn't want to face the fact that the two people were dead, that were killed by the father. The father was killed in self-defense when he tried to kill the third child. And the third kid now demanded his inheritance. And by law, they had to hand over the wealth of that town over to that third son. Because the name Michael was not real. So the children he had, even though they were his kids, they were his fourth and fifth sons. The third son, from his legitimate marriage, he had the right to demand the money of his father. Even though his father earned it the wrong way, it was still his money. But the locals there didn't want to give up all that money, because it would become a poor village again. Because they exploited this Michael. They had a narcissistic attitude that she exploited him, but their narcissistic attitude brought them in trouble. So they want to blame it all on this Michael, but really when you look at it, it was their greed that traps them. So now the people don't want to face this. They just want to be left alone. But they can't be left alone because that third son is alive. He wants his inheritance. And how are you going to cover up two deaths? Actually 3, because the man himself was dead also. So, this is what happened. One of the elders of that village came with a plan. He said, let's pretend we have a lot of debt over here, and that we cannot hand back the wealth that is owed to that third son. So, they made up a bank that didn't exist. They made false papers in which said that they owed, let me think of a number, £3,000. Let's say this happened in the early 1800s. Okay, so now the governor of that area had to say, okay, you can't pay now. The third son also had kids, and he transferred the knowledge of what happened to his kids. That third son, let's call him James, passed away. 3 generations later, the great-grandchildren of James now visit that community, which also 3 generations, I'm saying 4 generations further. The people from that community, they so-called had a lot of debts. They live in fancy houses, and they have a lot of horses. They're kind of the rich kids on the block. But here's the thing now. That money, that wealth, that money came from scamming from that Peter. And the village back then, the people then scammed the authorities by claiming they had a lot of debt. So now you had this bank that was there, which was a fake bank, but everyone thought it was a real bank. And they pretended to have debts, but they used that as an excuse not to pay taxes and to hide other stuff. So the descendants of this Peter thought, hold on a minute. We are struggling over here on our farms, and those folks are living the rich life based on our wealth. We're not going to take this. But then one of the descendants of Peter said, you know what? They're using that bank, that fake bank, as a hoax, right? This is what we're going to do. We are going to so-called take over that bank, and now we're going to use that hoax that their ancestors installed in order to get back what's ours. And they succeed. What happened now? The descendants of Peter now got what they claim to be their wealth that they should have inherited. But now the other people who didn't want to face that their riches came as a result of a fraud that their ancestors committed, they now want to take revenge on the descendants of Peter. So now, another 2 generations later, there were gangs that were hunting the descendants of this Peter. Why? Because they blamed their economic woes on the descendants of Peter. So you see what's going on now? Now a generational conflict has emerged that goes on and on and on. And the people of that village, to say now they're 6 generations later, they don't want to process what happened so they can really move on. Their whole identity is as a tunnel vision based on we are supposed to be the richest people around, but those Peter people over there, I'm just making up an ethnicity, those Peter folks over there, they make it hard on us. Even though, if they look carefully in their history, they know very well that their ancestors 6 generations ago, became rich though to scams. So now, those people want everyone around them to agree with them. So they built policies eventually against the Peter ethnicity. The people from the Peter ethnicity don't really bother with those other folks because, A, justice happened 2 generations ago. They've moved on. So now the people that claim the riches now developed a pattern. And they spread propaganda against the Peter tribe. And everyone that's affected by propaganda partakes in their rage against the Peter tribe. And eventually it becomes so big that it becomes a national policy that leads to genocide. And now the genocide occurred. Now people want to cover this up also. So now there's collective guilt on the community that people don't want to face. So what happened here? Throughout the generations, the descendants of the people from that village, they used fishing. They tricked people into agreeing with them, even though there was nothing noble about being in agreement with those folks. Because they were scammers too. They became scammers just like the scammer they exploited. So they became narcissistic scammers too. But the only way they could hide this, the only way they could still make a claim on those riches was to get an audience to back them up. They needed them back up. And now, why did I give you this parable? Because that is what the pagan rulers of this world do. They need your backup to keep you in a state of anxiety. They need your backup to exploit you. They need your backup to trap the human population. That's why they create political movements, political parties, religious movements. They even create cults here and there. They create the multinational corporations. They do all of this to occupy your mind, to trick you into agreement with them. So, the whole idea of left versus right in politics or in economics is to trap you. Because once you're trapped, you're not aware you're trapped. That is what it means to be trapped. You're not aware you're trapped. And once you're trapped, you can be exploited. And because you're participating in the state of anxiety that's going on, you now are a stakeholder of the state of anxiety. And therefore you are a stakeholder of the darkness that's going on. So for you to be delivered, you need to face this, that you've been scammed, and that scamming led to you participating and being part of self-destruction. So you need to face this about yourself, then seek for deliverance. When looking for deliverance, you'll find out that Christ is the only way. You agree with Him, you renew your mind, and you're free. And now you operate in real abundance, in line with Christ. But a lot of folks in the world don't want to face anything. They just want to be left alone. Just like the people from that village that really exploited a scammer. Now they were trapped in the scammings of the scam they've exploited. And this is what Satan often does. Satan wants you to exploit him. Because once you exploit him, you become part of what he's doing. And once you're part of what he's doing, he got you. Let me say it one more time. Satan wants you to exploit him. Because once you exploit him, you become part of what he's doing. And he got you. So, don't let demons fish you. Agree with Christ and be at peace.